Welcome back, Doug Pagitt Radio. 11:20, 20 minutes after 11 a.m. if you're listening live in the central time zone of Minneapolis and St. Paul. If you're listening on a podcast, we sure do appreciate your listenership and spread the word. Let other people know that you listen to the podcast. When you are joined here by author, by writer, by average girl, by her own accounting, Shauna Niequist, who has written a terrific little book called Bittersweet, Thoughts on Change, Grace, and Learning the Hard Way. Before the break, I mentioned to Shauna that I wanted her to tell us a little bit about the process of paying attention to one's own life. I know this is something that Shauna writes about and talks about and encourages other people to do, and I think that it's awfully important. And I think that comes out in this book, Bittersweet. My wife, natural health coach Shelley Pagitt, has been listening, or has been reading your book. In fact, I tried to grab it this morning to bring into the studio with me, and she had absconded with it. So, and she said, "Hey, I'm reading Shauna's book. I really like it, and I really like that I can hear her voice in it." So I think you found a way to do this in your own writing, to tell your story and to have it be a part of your voice. And I'm wondering what advice you have for people about how they can pay attention to their own life, to the life that they're living, to the story that they've lived up until this point and where they're going with it, and how they can pay more attention to it.
Well, and I think the really important thing is I think sometimes we don't trust that our stories are enough. I think especially for Christians, we think that theology or doctrine or some sort of process of declaring beliefs is really what transforms people.
Ah, yeah.
I think what transforms people is when you see another person who's been transformed and you say, I really love the way they're living. I love the integrity with which they live. I love the spirit and fearlessness with which they live, and I want to invite that more and more into my life. You know, my life didn't get changed. When I look back at the really pivotal choices I made in my life, it wasn't because an abstract theory popped in my mind and I said, ooh, I would like to adopt that intellectually,
right,
and that will change everything. What has changed me has been watching people live a way I want to live, and I say, like, tell me about that. I want to be like you in that way. And so I think there's a lot more power in sharing our stories than we think there is. And I think we think like, oh, that's just like my normal everyday life. What really matters are these big ideas or these big moments. These are the big moments. The way you treat your kid today is who you are.
Yeah.
The way you interact with your friends tonight is the person that you are and the life that you're living. And so it's not these grand ideas or abstractions we have about our value systems. It's the actual, like, how did you talk to your husband this morning? You
know, that's interesting. There's this TV commercial right now for Jeep, the people who make those, trucks and Jeeps and so on. And their little slogan, their tagline is, "What we make makes us." And I've kind of been bothered when I've heard that, because I don't like the idea, of people getting a message that you basically are what you do. But to the sense of, like, you can say you're a great car company, but if you don't make great cars, you're not a great car company. Like, make great cars, and then that's who you are as a company that makes those things. And that's similar to what I think you're saying, and they're tapping into that same kind of sensibility that look, your life is not made up of these declarative statements or these beliefs that you have. It's how are you going about your own life? So how do you encourage people to pay attention to that if their life is full of things that sometimes they're not very happy with? Right? Like, all of us have things in our life that we're like, I really want to be beyond that. I don't want to be stuck there. I don't want to live that kind of life. I want to be somebody else. So we have this yearning for one kind of life, and then we have this reality of another kind that we're living. And I think that you do a beautiful job of this in Bittersweet, of saying, you know what? Yeah, we live with a life that is bitter and is sweet, and we have to embrace both of those things.
And I think there's, some of it is, kind of that, like, I think it's a really strange and difficult dance of sort of being flexible, being tender, being adaptable, allowing what is, making space for what was unplanned, and then also saying, no, I'm going to change my life. I can make more change in my life than I think we all can make a lot more change in our lives than we think we can. I had a wonderful therapist a couple of years ago, and the phrase, there are a lot of phrases that have stuck with me from that time, but one of the phrases was, are you living by design or by default?
Oh, that's
and
a nice
I think that's
line.
a very powerful phrase. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I think it's a good story, but I'm also telling you this because I'm telling every single person I can right now. I ran 20 miles yesterday.
I saw that in your social stream over on the Facebook.
That is just
I was quite proud of you. That's great.
Well, and you've known me long enough to know, like, I'm not that girl.
Yeah. I was wondering if you were being chased by something.
Exactly. I'm like a wine, cheese, magazines kind of girl.
Yeah. Snuggle up on the couch and read and write. Yeah.
Exactly. But I have a very dear friend, and I would consider us to be sort of made of the same stuff. We have a lot of the same hang-ups. We have a lot of the same anxieties. We have a lot of the same bad habits. And in the last several years, she has become a runner. Oh. And I have watched it really bring health, physically, emotionally, in all sorts of ways. Like, I watch her, and I want to live more how she's living. And so literally, she lives in San Francisco. I live in Chicago. I don't see her that often. I think about her, and I put on my running shoes, and I get out the door because I want what she has in her life. And so for several years, I sort of, complained and waited around and said, oh, I could never be like that, and oh, if only I were that kind of person. And then at a certain point, I said, I think I'm the only one standing in my way. Like, I think I can
you're the
be
biggest
whatever
player
kind of
in your
person
life.
I want.
Right.
And it has been a really moving experience for me to say, at 33, I don't want to have so many statements of, like, I'm just not that kind of person. I could never be that kind of person. I could never do that. I think we have more power than we think to make more important changes than we think in our own lives and certainly in the world around us.
And I so appreciate your saying that, because I think that is so helpful for people, and I think they need to hear those voices on a regular basis. But that doesn't come easily, and the thing that's, I think, encouraging about the book Bittersweet is that you tell the stories there of when that's been difficult and how...
Totally.
I mean, this isn't a book sort of full of success stories. This is full of, here's when it's been very hard, and here's what I've seen in myself, and here's who I want to be. And again, I think you have a unique ability to use, language in a way that invokes a sense of empathy and a sense of call for people to realize I don't have to be the way that I am. And so talk a little bit about some of the more difficult parts of the book, some of the more difficult stories in the book. I mean, I left you 2 minutes for this, but to give people a flavor of the kind of difficult issues that you raise in the book.
Well, I would say it's difficult on two levels. On one hand, it's difficult because my husband and I went through a really difficult season. I lost my job, and that had kind of a ripple effect through my whole life. Then he left his job. We had both been working at the same church. Very difficult relationally. We felt very much strangers in our town and our world. And then had a season that was really both difficult and full of questions financially. Mm-hmm. And right during that time, I had a pregnancy that I had a miscarriage that had some ongoing health implications. So we're feeling kind of unrooted and untethered in our lives, and this new baby represents all this hope and promise and future that we're still making a family, we're still moving ahead, and then all of a sudden it turns into this very medical, very scary situation for several months. And so that's kind of those are the events. Underneath that is I handled them so poorly. In one point in Bittersweet, I say, this is my confession. I profess to be a person of deep faith and depth, and a lot of that stuff went out the window when I was faced with circumstances that really scared me and really broke my heart. And I'm really sorry that I'm really embarrassed. I'm ashamed of that. And the only thing I can do is learn and grow in such a way that the next time a really difficult circumstance presents itself to me, I have learned what I need to learn to face it with at least a little bit more grace, a little bit more belief, a little bit more hope. I was unprepared for a lot of those things, and I hope that I know better than to know that won't happen again, but I hope I'm at least a little better prepared.
Well, and thanks for sharing that part of your story in the book with others, because I know there's so many people who find themselves in the same place. And to borrow, a metaphor from the story earlier, they need a running partner if they're gonna get their shoes on and get out and run a life that's open and honest. So that's Shauna Niequist. Her book is Bittersweet: Thoughts on Change, Grace, and Learning the Hard Way. You should order 2 books today: Bittersweet and Church in the Inventive Age. They both came out this week, and they'll both change your lives. Shauna, thanks, pal, and thanks for the book, folks. You can pick it up at all the places where they sell the finest in books, and you can get it at ShaunaNiequist.com. Hey, we'll be back with the Cripes. They come on. You got to be kidding me, and right on, all clustered together. Like Badger Radio on AM 950.